Hi class, so this week we're covering chapter 9, Gender, Gender Identity, Gender Expression, and Sexism. Learning objective number 1 is to define gender, gender identity, gender expression, and gender roles. According to the American Psychological Association, gender is defined as attitudes, feelings, and behaviors that a given culture associates with a person's biological sex. Behavior that is compatible with cultural expectations is referred to as gender normative. So gender is becoming a complicated concept. Researchers and educators are challenging the binary view of gender, recognizing instead that other genders have been recognized, such as genderqueer or intergender. Gender identity is a person's internal psychological self-concept of being either male or female, or possibly some combination of both. Gender expression concerns how we express ourselves to others in ways related to gender that include both behavior and personality. Gender roles are the attitudes, behaviors, rights, and responsibilities that particular cultural groups associate with or assumed or assigned sex. Gender role socialization is the process of conveying what is considered appropriate behavior and perspectives for males and females in a particular culture. So we will also differentiate between the concepts of gender and sex. Sex refers to the biological distinction between being female and being male, which is usually categorized on the basis of the reproductive organs and genetic makeup. Learning objective 2 is to discuss the social construction of gender. Social constructionist approach is another concept within the social construction of gender. Social construction is the process by which people's perception of reality is shaped largely by the subjective meaning that they give to an experience. From their perspective, little shared reality exists beyond that which people socially create. It is, however, the social construction of reality that influences people's beliefs and actions. So how people think about situations as they interact with others become what is real to them. We also apply subjective meanings to our existence and experience. So in other words, our experiences don't just happen to us. Good, bad, positive, or negative, we attach meanings to our reality. People learn how they're expected to behave through their interactions with others around them. The social construction of gender looks at the structure of the gendered social order as a whole and at the processes that construct and maintain it. It assumes that traditional gender expectations are not facts carved in stone, but rather perceptions and expectations that can be changed. Learning objective 3 is to examine the complexities of gender, gender identity, and gender expression. So there are other forms of gender expression. It's estimated that about 1 out of every 1,500 to 2,000 babies are born with some combination of physical characteristics that are demonstrated by both sexes. So such person is referred to as a pseudo-hermaphrodite or an intersex. And a true hermaphrodite is a person born with fully formed ovaries and fully formed testes, which is exceptionally rare. The Intersex Society of North America makes several recommendations regarding how intersex children and their families should be treated. So these children and their parents should be treated with respect. Physicians and medical staff should address the conditions and issues openly and honestly without shame. Families with intersex children should be referred to social workers or other mental health professionals to address issues and potential decisions. These families should also be connected with other families who have intersex children for peer support and deeper insight into the issues involved. After careful considerations, intersex child should be assigned a gender as a boy or a girl, depending on which of these genders the child is more likely to feel as she or he grows up. Such gender assignment should not involve surgery because surgery may destroy tissue that the child may want later on in life. The child should receive medical treatment to sustain physical health, and surgeries to make the child look more normal should be avoided until the child is old enough to decide for him or herself. So surgery is not recommended until later on in life if it's for making the child, if it's to make the child look more normal, and only wait until the child is old enough to decide for themselves. That way it's not a decision that later on in life may need to change. Learning objective 4 is to evaluate traditional gender role stereotypes over the lifespan. So from the moment they're born, boys and girls are treated very differently. Girls are wrapped in pink blankets and parents are told that they now have a beautiful little girl. Boys, on the other hand, are wrapped in blue blankets and parents are told that they now are proud parents of a bouncing baby boy. The process of gender stereotyping continues through childhood, adolescence, and adulthood. Gender stereotyping involves expectations about how people should behave based on their gender. So female stereotypes include being more nurturant, supportive, intuitive, emotional, dependent, passive, obedient, submissive. But when it comes to male stereotypes, those include being powerful, creative, intelligent, rational, independent, self-reliant, authoritative, or successful. These stereotypes have nothing to do with an individual's personality, personal strengths, and weaknesses, or likes or dislikes. Parents generally treat boys in a more physical manner than they treat girls. Parents also tend to communicate to male and female children differently. For example, they tend to respond positively to boys who behave actively and to girls who talk calmly or touch gently. Boys are discouraged from emotional expression, such as crying. For example, if a 6-year-old girl, Susie, falls, skins her knees, and comes into the house crying, her mother might respond, "You poor thing, did you hurt yourself? It's okay now, let me kiss it and make it better." But if a 6-year-old boy, Bill, falls, skins his knee, and runs into the house, his mother might respond this way, No, Bill. Big boys don't cry. It'll be okay. Let me put a Band-Aid on it." Even very little boys are often encouraged to be strong, brave, and not to be emotional. Okay? A tragic result of this is that as adult males often maintain this facade, this sometimes creates problems in their adult love and sexual relationship, in which men are expected to express their feelings and communicate openly. So gender differences are demonstrated in how children play as well. So boys are more aggressive than girls. Additionally, children tend to choose gender-related toys. Boys are drawn more to masculine toys such as guns and trucks, whereas girls tend to prefer feminine playthings such as Barbies. Because adolescence is a time of changes, it can be difficult. Bodies change drastically, sexual desires emerge, peers exert tremendous pressure to confirm, personality identities are struggling, and conflicts with parents are rampant. So in addition to these other issues, adolescents may have to deal with powerful pressures to conform to gender stereotypes. These can come from their parents, from peers, from teachers, and even the media. This process is what we call gender intensification. It is a period of increased pressures for gender role conformity. Women are often taught that they should be fulfilled by becoming wives and mothers. Men, on the other hand, are often taught that their main source of self-satisfaction should come from their jobs. So the pressure and expectations resulting from both of these stereotypes often create serious problems. A woman who devotes herself entirely to being a wife and a homemaker makes herself entirely dependent on her husband. If her husband dies or becomes ill or leaves her, such a woman is in a vulnerable position. Almost 1 out of every 2 marriages in the U.S. ends up in divorce. So traditional gender role socialization and stereotypes are associated with at least 3 disadvantages for women. So first, women are encouraged to enter fields segregated by gender, where they earn significantly less money than men. Second, even when they work outside the home, which most do, they are still expected to do majority of the housework and provide most of childcare. This is true regardless of their social class, the status of their job, or rural or urban residence. Often, this expectation can create marital stress as the wife pressures the husband to share households and childcare tasks equally. Even when the husband participates significantly in household tasks, it is still primarily remains the wife's responsibility. Men too experience lack of freedom and negative consequences from gender role stereotyping. At least three repercussions result. First, men are expected to be doers who are competent, aggressive, and successful. As a result, they are pressured to succeed in a career, be it with engineering, crime scene investigation, real estate, dentistry. A man holding a job with lesser status is often thought to be a lesser person. A second negative impact of men on gender role stereotyping is the pressure not to express emotions. Men are taught that they should not cry and that they should be strong and decisive. They should especially withhold any emotional demonstrations associated with weakness, such as depression, fear, and sadness. A third negative consequence of gender role stereotyping for men involves the fact that their average lifespan is significantly less than that of a woman. So, for instance, white females live an average of almost 5 years longer than white men. And African American women about 6 years longer than their male counterparts. The ongoing problem for both men and women is that gender stereotypes pressure people to conform. Learning objective 5. Assess some differences between men and women. So although there are no differences between male and female in terms of intellectual ability or IQ, there has been heated debate for many years regarding differences in males and females' verbal ability. Males have traditionally been taught to have better mathematical ability and females better verbal ability. However, later research has raised some serious questions about the extent of these differences and even whether significant differences exist at all. Another area in which differences between males and females are evident is in verbal and nonverbal communication style. Women tend to be better than men at understanding nonverbal cues and reading other people's emotions. In general, women are in better touch with their emotions and feelings of others. Men and women are more similar than dissimilar. The differences we refer to are differences in treatment and differences in what people have learned. Sexism needs to be addressed because it is unfair. It causes people to be treated differently because of their gender when there are no objective reasons for differential treatment. Historically, they have had fewer rights and have been financially less well off to a significant degree. They are victims of life events and that are rarely touched. Women are victims of life events that rarely touch the lives of men. These issues are economic inequality, sexual harassment, sexist language, sexual assault, battered women, unempowered women. So here are the significant issues and events in the lives of women, just previously mentioned. Learning objective number 6 has to do with discussing economic inequality between men and women. So it is well known that women generally earn less than men. Today, the median income of women who work full-time is about 77% of what men earn. The wage gap between women and men becomes even worse when race is taken into account. That is, women of color are significantly more disadvantaged than a white woman. Also, consider that for all races, women significantly earn less than men at any educational level. The median income for women with a bachelor's degree or more is 64% of what men with a college education or more would earn. Similarly, the average annual income for women with a high school education is approximately 74% of what correspondingly educated men earn. So women tend to be clustered in low-paying, supportive occupations. Many women and people of color are still segregated into a small number of jobs, such as clerical, service workers, nurses, teachers, when men tend to be found in higher-paying occupations, such as becoming doctors, dentists, lawyers. So men also dominate professions. Men also dominate professions involving science, technology, engineering, and math. I guess the even more striking finding is that women earn less than men even when they're in the same occupation. So even when men and women are in the same position, women earn less than men. With equivalent work experience and skills, professional women are far less likely to get at the top of their professions or corporations. The same picture of wage inequality is found in social work. Some recent research focusing on people with a master's degree in social work found that women earn an average of $12,000 less than men, even when various factors were controlled. Women earn 14% less than men. Another recent survey by the National Association of Social Workers found that the median salaries for female social workers were $11,000 or 17.2% less than those for male social workers. The American Association of University Professors also found that the breakdown by gender indicates that men generally earn higher salaries except in the baccalaureate colleges. Learning objective number 7 is to examine sexual harassment. So sexual harassment is defined as unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, and other verbal and physical conduct of a sexual nature when this conduct explicitly or implicitly affects an individual's employment, unreasonably interferes with an individual's work performance, or creates an intimidating, hostile, or offensive work environment. Although most victims are women, sexual harassment can be directed at either males or females. Sexual harassment can also take place when verbal remarks make the work or academic atmosphere offensive or stifling. For example, female students might be forced to endure derogatory remarks from a male instructor that focuses on women's anatomy or their inferior ability. Or female employees might force themselves to tolerate a male supervisor's annoying behaviors. There is some indication that up to 70% of all working women have experienced sexual harassment. There are some negative psychological effects of sexual harassment, and these include fear of retaliation, fear of not being believed, feelings of shame and humiliation, a belief that nothing can or will be done, and a reluctance to cause problems to the harasser. So harassed women may become nervous, irritable, depressed, and exhibit other symptoms of post-traumatic stress. Women also report various physical reactions to sexual harassment. These include chronic neck and back pain, upset stomach, and some other eating or sleeping disorders. In reality, the vast majority of sexually harassed women do not file a complaint. So most people don't report these incidents. Sexual harassment incurs financial costs as well. So over the past decade, many millions of dollars have been awarded in federal sexual harassment suits. Additional costs for federal government include job turnover costs, such as hiring and training new employees, costs due to absenteeism and increased health problems, and reduced worker productivity due to emotional stress. Learning objective 8 is to review sexist language. So one form of sexual harassment involves making verbal remarks that establish an offensive or stifling work or educational environment. Such language can include jokes with inappropriate sexual connotations. It can also include derogatory comments about ability, based on gender. For example, a male professor might say to his students, girls don't usually do very well in this major. They are usually not as bright as men. They just run off and get married anyway. Such comments are discriminatory. Oftentimes, the English words themselves may reflect an aura of sexism and unfairness. For example, the word man seems to occur everywhere. So, for example, mankind, chairman, salesman, congressman, best man for the job. These terms imply that women are included, but in a subsidiary way. So instead of just saying mankind, or for example, instead of saying chairman, salesman, just say chairperson, salesperson. It's a better term, and it's not sexist. Learning objective 9. So learning objective 9 is to examine rape and sexual assault. So the most intimate violation of a person's privacy and dignity is rape. According to the Bureau of Justice Statistics, rape is forced sexual intercourse, including both psychological coercion as well as physical force. This can include forced oral sexual activity, and anal sexual activity. Attempted rape includes not only physical attempts, but also verbal threats of rape. So when it comes to sexual assault, it involves a wide range of victimizations separate from rape or attempted rape. These include attacks or attempted attacks, generally involving unwanted sexual contact between victims and offender. A sexual assault may entail the use of force or verbal threat of force. Unwanted grabbing or fondling are sexual assaults as well. The Federal Bureau of Investigation reported over 80,000 rapes in 2011. So I know the data is a little bit, old, 2011. That number may change now that some years have passed, but in 2011 alone, it was about 80,000 each year. 93% of those were completed and 7% attempted. So one study also found that 20% of female college students said that they had been forced to have sexual intercourse, most often by someone they know. Women fail to report being raped for many reasons. So survivors whose bodies have been brutally violated often desperately want to forget that the horror ever happened. To report it basically just means that they have to go over the details over and over and again. Other survivors fear retribution from the rapist. If they call public attention to him, he might do it again to punish them. No police officer will ever be available all the time for protection. Other survivors feel that people around them will think less of them because they were raped. It's almost as if a part of them had been spoiled, a part that they would prefer to hide from the other people. Rape is an ugly crisis that takes a great amount of courage to face. There are at least 3 theoretical perspectives on why rape occurs. The first one is the victim precipitated rape. So this perspective assumes that the survivor is actually to blame for the rape, that the woman asked for it. Perhaps she was wearing provocative clothing or subconsciously desired to be raped. The second view is our theoretical perspective. It concerns the rapist's psychopathology. So this view proposes that the rapist is emotionally disturbed or mentally unbalanced. He rapes because he is sick. This view places virtually none of the blame on society or on social attitudes. The female perspective on rape, or the feminist perspective on rape, is the other theoretical perspective, and it emphasizes that rape is the logical reaction of men who are socialized to dominate women. Rape is seen as a manifestation of men or men's need to aggressively maintain power over women, it has little to do with sexuality. The feminist perspective sees rape as a societal problem rather than only an individual one. So both aggressors and survivors are brought up to believe that sexual aggression is natural, and as a result, survivors often blame themselves. The rationale is that they should have expected to be raped, they should have been prepared or have done something to prevent it. So basically, with the feminist approach, it is assumed that society raises up or expects from us to act a certain way for men or women. And so with this perspective, they're basically saying that women should expect that they're going to get raped, and they should, because they expect it, they should be able to prevent it. Socializing women to consider themselves weak and nurturant also contributes to the problem. It fosters victims' mentality that it's an expectation that it's natural for women to be victims. The feminist perspective emphasizes that these attitudes need to be changed. Only then can rape as a social problem disappear. So those perspectives, those views need to be changed. Various myths about rape need to be examined and corrected as well. One myth is that rape tends to occur in dark alleys. Although some situations such as hitchhiking or walking home alone in the dark tend to increase your chances of being raped, many rapes occur in the woman's own residence. In cases occurring indoors, especially in their own homes, survivors are very likely to know the rapist. This presents a problem because people tend to feel safe when they're in their own home with a person they know. However, having knowledge of this fact is important to if it helps people be more cautious. So a majority of rapes happen, in the person's own home or with people that they know. Another myth is that only strangers are potential rapists. According to the Bureau of Justice Statistics, 57% of sexual assault and rapes were committed by someone the survivor knew, and 20% of perpetrators were intimate partners. Acquaintance or date rapes have become common occurrences, particularly on college campuses. So date rape, drugs can be used to spike a woman's drink and causes her to lose consciousness and make her vulnerable to rape. Women are encouraged to watch their drinks carefully when they are out from the beginning to the end. If you have to step away from your drink or you weren't looking at your drink for a while, or even, losing sight of your drink for any time period, it's best to just get a new drink. Still another rape myth is that women really want to be raped. This myth is supports the misconception that women enjoy being raped because she sexually surrenders, and it perpetuates the belief that rape is a sexual act rather than a violent one. One final myth that requires debunking is that women ask for it because of their behavior or the way they were dressed. This myth places the responsibility for the violent act on the victim, not the perpetrator. There is tremendous pressure on women in our culture to be attractive. Style of clothing currently emphasizes women's physical assets. A woman has a right to dress the way she wants and be attractive, and no female or male ever deserves to be raped. Actually, most rapes are premeditated and planned by the perpetrator. So these are usually planned, and so how a woman is dressed has nothing to do with that. What is a rapist, or what do they look like? How do you know someone's a rapist? Well, there is no clearly defined profile of a rapist in terms of occupation, educational level, marital status, prior criminal history, or even reasons for committing the rape. However, a number of variables can predispose men to rape. First, they tend to come from hostile, violent family environments. Perhaps they learn to demonstrate anger violently after witnessing or experiencing battery or sexual abuse. Second, perpetrators are more likely to have a history of delinquency. A third factor characterizing perpetrators is sexual promiscuity. So rapists might perceive that the violent subjugation of women enhances their self-esteem and status, especially within an angry or violent delinquent peer group. A fourth variable often characterizing rapists is that they are hostile toward women, scorning traits that might be construed as feminine, such as empathy or nurturance. Now, there are three, types of rapists. The first one is anger rapist, and he displays anger in overt ways, such as by using a knife, using force, displaying overwhelming anger, and projecting a macho image. Power rapist demonstrates power by exploiting victims, often has a sexual dysfunction or an obvious physical deformity for which they're trying to compensate. When it comes to the sadistic rapists, they're motivated to assault in order to live out their sexual and aggressive fantasies, and gains gratification from restraining, torturing, or humiliating the victim by focusing on where they're most vulnerable, their sexuality. As previously mentioned, women are in danger of being raped by someone who they know and in a place where they feel safe. So college campuses, approximately 80% of rapes are perpetrated by someone known to the victim. Unfortunately, the vast majority of date rapes go unreported. Alcohol and other drugs are often involved in date rapes. Men who believe in rape myths are more likely to see alcohol consumption as a sign that females are sexually available. Another dynamic of date rape involves the misconception that although her words say no, her eyes say yes. Women can experience serious psychological effects that can persist for half a year or more following a rape. They call these emotional changes the rape trauma syndrome, now considered to be a specific aspect of post-traumatic stress disorder. Post-traumatic stress disorder is the psychological reaction occurring after a highly stressing event that is usually characterized by depression, anxiety, flashbacks, recurrent nightmares, and avoidance of reminders of the event. The rape trauma syndrome has two basic phases. The first phase is the acute phase. The acute phase involves the woman's emotional reactions immediately following the rape and up to several weeks thereafter. The second stage of rape trauma syndrome is a long-term reorganization and recovery phase. So the emotional changes and reactions of this phase may linger on for years. Most rape survivors feel that the rape has changed their lives in one way or another. Reported reactions include fear of being alone, depression, sleeplessness, and most frequently an attitude of suspicion towards other people. Other long-term changes that sometimes occur includes avoiding involvement with men. So here are some suggestions for counseling rape survivors and some keys to empowerment. First, the counselor or social workers need to provide the survivor with immediate warmth and support. The survivor needs to feel safe. They need to feel free to talk. They need to be able to acknowledge their feelings before they can begin to deal with them. The initial reaction to being raped might be to call the police and relate the incident. However, many survivors choose not to do this. There are numerous reasons why this is so, including fear that the rapist will try to get revenge, fear of public embarrassment, and an attitude that it won't matter anyway. It's financially expensive and emotionally draining to take a rape case to court. In reality, even when they are persistent, women have found it difficult to have rapists prosecuted. In many cases, already discussed, the police get to determine that the case is unfounded. Okay? So reporting a rape should be done within 48 hours at the absolute best. The sooner the rape is reported and evidence is gathered, the better the chance of being able to get a conviction. A third major issue that the rape survivors need to address is their medical status following the assault. So at some point, the survivor needs to attend to the possibility of pregnancy. She needs to be asked about this issue at an appropriate time and also in a gentle manner. She should be encouraged to seek medical help, both for this possibility and for screening for sexually transmitted diseases, including HIV. Learning objective 10 is to explore intimate partner violence. So there are several terms associated with intimate partner violence, including domestic violence, family violence, spouse abuse, and battered women. When it comes to battering, it includes but not limited to physical abuse that may involve slapping, punching, knocking down someone, choking, kicking, hitting with objects, threatening with weapons, stabbing and shooting, and also emotional abuse that involves the instillment of fear, oppression, and control of the victim. The battered woman syndrome implies the systematic and repeated use of one or more of the above against a woman by her husband or lover. A series of traits tend to characterize men who batter their female partners. They are likely to adhere to common masculine gender role stereotypes, such as not displaying emotion or sensitivity to others, because they perceive these as reflecting weakness. Batterers like to feel it's important to maintain male dominance in society and to keep women under control. Gender-based violence against women is still widely considered normal. So batterers may be insecure and jealous, which results in their lashing out viciously when threatened and trying to isolate their partner. The consequences can be serious injury for a female partner, even murder. So although intimate partner violence occurs in all classes and at all socioeconomic levels, stress from job loss or poverty or emotional distress, such as depression, can also contribute to the potential for violence. There are three basic phases that tend to characterize battery in an intimate relationship. In the first phase, stress and tension build up. The woman tries to make things okay and avoid confrontations. There may be a few minor abusive incidents. With the second phase in the battering cycle is explosion. This is when the battering occurs. It is generally the shortest of the three phases, but it may also last up for several days. The third phase includes making up. Once the man's tension has been released, he adamantly states that he is truly sorry for what he has done. He swears he will never do it again. The battered woman relents and believes him. He is forgiven and all seems well until the cycle of violence begins again. So why do women stay? Well, women stay in the violent relationships for many reasons. Many women who seek help from shelters and even initiate separation from the courts eventually return to their abusive home situations as the cycle for violence progresses. There are many different reasons as to why this happens. One is economic dependence, lack of self-confidence, lack of power, fear of the abuser, guilt, feeling isolated with nowhere to go, fear for their children, and even love. So perpetrators tend to claim that their female partners couldn't survive without them, and after an extended period of time, many of these women start to believe those things. A battered woman feels or views herself as having significantly less power in her relationship with an abusive man than do women with a partner who is nonviolent. Battered women see their relationships as almost completely dominated by their perpetrator. It's logical for a battered woman to fear brutal retaliation by the perpetrator if she leaves him. The battered woman might even fear death at the hands of an abandoned male partner. Also, many victims of intimate partner violence feel it is their own fault that they're abused. To some extent, this guilty feeling may be due to their husbands telling them that they are to blame for the problems they're having. Perhaps because of their low self-esteem, it's easy for them to be critical of themselves. Their beliefs in traditional gender role stereotypes may cause them to wonder how they have failed in their role as a wife. Battered women often try to keep the facts of their battering a secret. They may feel isolated from friends and family. Frequently, the perpetrator strongly discourages his female partner's interaction with family and friends. He criticizes them. He makes it difficult as possible for her to communicate with them. A battered woman usually fears for her children's safety. So first, she might be worried about her ability to support them financially on her own. She may firmly adhere to the belief that children need a father. She may think that a father who abuses his wife is better than no father at all. Third, she may even fear losing custody of her children. The abuser may threaten to take them away from her. She may have little knowledge of the complicated legal system and may believe that he can do and will do it. Many victims of intimate partner violence still feel love or emotional attachment to their abusive husbands. So those are some of the reasons why women choose to stay. Despite the difficulties in dealing with domestic violence, definite intervention strategies can be undertaken. So these include involving the police departments, it includes shelters, and also specific counseling approaches. So police officers are usually the first outside means of intervention in episodes of domestic abuse. Historically, police have often tried to avoid intervention in domestic struggles, feeling that people should take care of their own problems privately at home. On the other hand, many police departments, despite their previous reluctance, are taking an increasingly active interest in addressing family violence. For example, there are training programs targeting violence or domestic violence are being developed for people or for police and other personnel working with battered women. And some states have also implemented mandatory arrest laws under which police must remove people who have been violent. The most immediate need for a battered woman who seeks to flee her situation is a place to go. For this purpose, shelters have been developed around the country. Such shelters and domestic violence programs provide a safe place where battered women can obtain temporary shelter. Domestic violence shelters and programs often provide a range of other services in addition to temporary shelter. They have a crisis phone line, which can provide immediate assistance when women are in the midst of or have just experienced domestic violence and sexual assault. Counseling is often provided to offer support and to help women look objectively at their situations or to develop safety plans in the event of a crisis. It also helps to talk about potential alternatives and help women make their own decisions about what's best for them. And advocacy can also involve offering assistance to victims in obtaining an outside community resources or services. Public education can present a range of audience who can teach community residents about domestic violence and sexual assault. Legal advocacy can help domestic violence survivors negotiate the legal system, obtain restraining orders, and address divorce and custody issues. The Batterers Intervention Program can work with people who batter to educate them about the dynamics involved in domestic violence, teach anger management techniques, enhance self-esteem to decrease the need to control, and to develop alternatives to abusive behavior. There are also some basic suggestions gathered from a range of sources regarding how social workers and counselors can help victims of intimate partner violence. During the initial interview, a victim of intimate partner violence is probably very anxious. During her initial meeting with a social worker or counselor, she may be worried about what to say. The counselor needs to, or should be, or should try to make the survivor feel comfortable as possible, and that they have them feel that they can talk about anything. A battered woman has probably been weakened both physically and emotionally. She needs someone to empathize with her and express genuine concern. Many battered women will display a range of emotional reactions, including helplessness, fear, anger, guilt, embarrassment. The counselor needs to encourage the survivor to get all these emotions out in the open. One aspect of counseling that is easy to forget is focusing on the survivor's strengths. A battered woman will probably be suffering from low self-esteem. She probably needs help in identifying her positive characteristics. Most survivors probably don't have much information about how they can be helped. Information about available legal, medical, and social services may open up alternatives to them. And a battered woman may feel trapped. She may be so overwhelmed that alternatives other than surviving in her abusive situation may not even have occurred to her. Her alternatives may include returning to the marriage, getting counseling for both herself and her partner, temporarily separating from him, establishing a means for financial support for herself, or even filing for divorce. One other important counseling technique is helping the survivor establish a safe plan of action. She needs to clearly understand and define what she chooses to do. This choice may include formulating major goals, such as divorcing her husband. It may involve setting smaller sub-goals, such as maybe developing a list of existing daycare centers that she can use. An advocate can seek out information for a survivor of domestic violence and provide her with encouragement. An advocate can also help the survivor get in touch with legal, medical, and social service resources and to find her way through bureaucratic processes. Learning objective 11 is to identify means of empowering women. Social workers can help women build up their self-confidence and self-esteem. Positive qualities can be identified and emphasized. They can provide practice situations and guide their female clients through more effective ways of handling difficult or uncomfortable situations. Assertiveness improves personal interactions, which in turn builds confidence. The real causes and targets of their anger can be identified. Once causes are recognized, social workers can help the client learn to deal with their anger directly through verbal and nonverbal communication styles, negotiation, confrontation, alliances, and networks. The qualities they like about themselves can be nurtured. Women can learn that they have the right to their own time for themselves and to participate in activities that they seem to enjoy. So these are all suggestions that can empower women to feeling that they can do things on their own and they can survive these incidents they've experienced. And this brings us to the end of chapter 9. So I guess at this point you should have a better understanding of gender, gender identity, gender expression, gender roles, and some of the issues related to gender. All right, so that's it for chapter 9.